Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambo channel. I'm going to share with you the latest from attorney John Deaton, and just this afternoon he posted something very interesting on X, formerly known as Twitter, in which he said towards the end, quote, "If reading this doesn't disgust you, I don't know what to say," end quote. And I have a feeling that everybody listening by the end of this video is going to be nodding their heads and saying, yup. I certainly hope so. I mean, maybe there's a small minority of you that won't find what attorney Deaton said here to be persuasive, but I sure as hell do. And a big chunk of what he's getting at is, look, he just acknowledged reality. He really did. You know, the Ethereum people, specifically Joseph Lubin, they were smart in the way that they basically teamed up with then SEC Chair Jay Clayton's law firm, his former law firm, Sullivan and Cromwell. And so he's acknowledging that that's a smart idea, and it made some of the community go, "Whoa, these are awful. This is awful, scummy behavior, this or that." And I'm sorry, let's just acknowledge reality. But from a rational perspective, John Deaton's actually knocking it out of the park. And he goes on to note, had Ripple taken a similar maneuver, probably, or at a minimum perhaps, wouldn't have been in a lawsuit with the SEC for 2.5+ years. But before going further, I do want to be clear, I do not have a legal or financial background of any kind. I am not offering legal or financial advice. And you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. All right, here's what attorney Deaton had to say. Several XRP holders got irritated at me because I said we must admit Joe Lubin, who quickly hired Sullivan and Cromwell right after Clayton's appointment to represent Consensus, including hiring several Sullivan and Cromwell lawyers as staff attorneys, including making a Sullivan and Cromwell partner deputy general counsel at Consensus, acted brilliantly. So folks, you could sit there, I just got to pause already, and I understand. I understand why people are saying what they're saying, I just don't share their perspective. You could sit here and make the point that doing all these things, it's scummy and it's very insider-ish and blah, blah, blah. You can do that. But what was the result? I'm sorry, did the SEC sue Joe Lubin and Consensus? No, the Ethereum founders? Did that happen? So we're just acknowledging reality here. So check this out. Attorney Deaton then says, it was brilliant and clever because, at a minimum, it guaranteed that Clayton would recuse himself from voting related to an enforcement action against one of his law firm's major clients. In answering questions from Elizabeth Warren, Senator Elizabeth Warren, Clayton swore he would recuse himself and not vote against an enforcement action involving his firm's clients. Now, folks, I'll pause and note, I've actually seen that video clip. It was before Jay Clayton was sworn in, as noted by attorney Deaton here. He was asked that question. And he said that he would recuse himself. So it could very well, or at least to some degree, actually I like the way that he worded it. I'm not even going to try and fix it. Attorney Deaton worded it perfectly. At a minimum, even if there weren't going to be some sort of insider activity where there is some sort of collusion between Jay Clayton and Joe Lubin, and in this sentence I'm not saying there was or wasn't. I'm just saying at a minimum, if that's the case, Joe Lubin already knew that Jay Clayton would have to recuse himself from this specific situation. So right there's a bit of strategery at play, right? Attorney Deaton continues. Now read the deposition of Hinman. Hinman reached out to Lubin because Clayton suggested he do so. Clayton was clearly helping his law firm, Sullivan and Cromwell, represent Lubin and Consensus. My God, Clayton reached out to Hinman asking him how the meeting with Lubin and Consensus were going. Ask Hinman how many other times Clayton inquired about the hundreds of meetings Hinman was having unrelated to Sullivan and Cromwell clients. And Clayton inquired more than once about the Consensus meetings. And so, folks, I get it. The optics are horrendous because, frequently where there's smoke, there's fire, right? I think we're probably going to agree on that, but still. So you have Jay Clayton here, and no interest in all these other bazillions of, whatever it is that have to do with crypto. But then, when it's Sullivan and Cromwell specifically, he wants to check in there with Hinman. That's a little curious, isn't it? Attorney Deaton continues. I'm sure Hinman's law firm, Simpson Thatcher, of which he was not retired, but was an ongoing profit-sharing partner, being a member of the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, is 100% sheer coincidence. Oh, yes, exactly. You can detect the sarcasm, obviously. I'm sure that the SEC Ethics Office repeatedly directing Hinman to stop violating the criminal financial conflict statute was nothing to be concerned with. For example, Hinman giving a speech that declared Bitcoin and ETH non-securities and disobeying the Ethics Office for the third time based on his own emails, and meeting his partner from Simpson Thacher's China office discussing Cannon's IPO, a company that sold Bitcoin and ETH mining equipment, which benefited immensely from his speech, was also purely coincidental. And again, to be clear, an abundance of sarcasm, which I absolutely love. Very warranted here. Definitely very warranted here. And then Attorney Deaton says, Hinman actually received profits from his law firm after giving that speech. He took in a total of over $10 million in profits from his law firm's success. Income unrelated to his retirement benefits. If you include retirement income, Hinman took in $15 million while at the SEC. He claims he knew nothing about his law firm's Enterprise Ethereum Alliance membership, which, by the way, can be proven 100% false. Of course, Clayton also immediately took a job at One River, which had made a $1 billion bet on Bitcoin and ETH in October of 2020, 2 months before Clayton voted for an enforcement action against Ripple. I'm sure just another coincidence. And so, folks, I'm with y'all. I understand the optics of all of this. I don't think any of us are really disputing that, are we? Is anyone disputing? The only people that are disputing this are people like, Charles Hoskinson of Cardano. Like, you can find people like that, or maybe Charles Gasparino. But these appearances of impropriety are real, and I think it's very clear that there was actual impropriety, not just appearances, especially if you look at those kickbacks, obviously, Hinman got, and you guys know the whole thing. It couldn't be more obvious this is the case. But still, it's okay to recognize reality, which is why I said at the beginning, it's like, don't blame John Deaton for this. This is just reality. He's just saying what reality is. Anyway, Deaton continues. So you see, as promised, Clayton didn't end up voting against an enforcement action regarding his law firm's client. Instead, he voted for an enforcement action against his law firm's client's biggest competitor and then filed it as he walked out the SEC's door. Exactly. So all this happened to benefit Clayton and Hinman. That's all fantastic for them, and just happened to harm the next largest crypto out there. Especially, and by the way, there has been, as I highlighted, some overlapping use cases for both platforms, XRP and ETH. We'll see to what degree ETH gets traction with some of that, but still. And then Deaton says, Clayton filed the case against the stern admonition and warning not to do so by Joe Grunfest, who had helped the Ether founders himself and thus was completely impartial. Grunfest warned Clayton that innocent holders would lose billions and be financially destroyed, although no exigency existed in this non-fraud case. He filed anyway. Although I may hold other things against Lubin, no one can blame him for being smart in hiring Sullivan and Cromwell. Had Brad Garlinghouse and Stuart Alderati hired Sullivan and Cromwell, they would have likely prevented the lawsuit by forcing Clayton to recuse himself. But they didn't, and now we are $200 million later with more to go. And so I'll pause and note that's true. I do think that's probably rather likely. Now, we don't know for sure because would the gap have been filled, and if so, by who? Somebody other than Clayton? Now, Clayton appears to have had particular incentivizers here, let's say. So we don't know for sure how a vote with a different human necessarily would have gone. But given that I don't think that the lawsuit was even after that all those years. I still don't think they had all their ducks in a row. I think it happened because Clayton, that was his last opportunity to push this thing out the door. There's the only way he could guarantee it would happen, so he so severely wanted it to happen, obviously. But, if you had somebody else that didn't have that motive, well, if they're already just, they're not in a biased position, already that, because we've been proven to be on the right side of history, even that would have made it way less likely that there would have been a lawsuit. And this has impacted all of our lives, obviously. I still think that we would have had a new all-time high for XRP in 2021 during the crypto bull run, if not for this, because XRP did directionally move up. It just happened to be the only top 10 crypto at the time that didn't hit a new all-time high. Another coincidence? Methinks not. And then he wraps up by stating, if reading this doesn't disgust you, I don't know what to say. You don't have to believe anyone did anything wrong to admit that we can't continue to exist in a system where choosing a law firm makes the difference between legal hell versus a regulatory advantage. Golf clap for Attorney Deaton. That's spot on, absolutely. And so I understand there may be a dissenting view, and that's always welcome. People don't have to agree with me for me to like and respect them. So if you feel differently than myself, if you feel differently than John Deaton, that's fine. Those are certainly minority positions, and in this case, I'd say for a good reason here. I mean, think about it. Just honestly ask yourself, had Ripple taken a similar approach and actually hired Sullivan and Cromwell to protect themselves, if that was their strategy, would you be upset about it? I don't think I would. On a personal level, just look, because I mean, I've got my own bias. I'm pro XRP and I want it to do well. So I'm just being honest. I sure as hell got a bias. It's not, as long as it's not illegal, if this is how the game is played, okay. I didn't set the damn rules. And if you want the rules to change, I'd probably get behind you. But as long as it's nothing illegal, then choose the law firm that would actually most likely result in the most benefit, even if that's the strategy that underlies it. Yes. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo.